Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So before we let the guests introduce themselves, I will tell you that Stabby and Nick are very upset they couldn't make it. We had to reschedule for reasons. And they had prior plans, but when we do follow-up episodes, because I'm sure this is going to spawn a few, they want us to make sure they are here because this is like one of their favorite jams. And they were shocked I had never seen it, and I was told to do better.
I was shocked you'd never
I
seen
am
it.
too.
I'm still shocked you've never seen it.
Well, I've seen episode 1 and 2 now, so it's okay. But before we talk about what brought us here, and obviously if you're reading the title, you know, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves. So we're going to start in alphabetical order as described by the gurus known as Word document. We've got Mr. David Hensley.
Hi, so I'm David Hensley. I write sword and pistol space opera, post-apocalyptic sci-fi, a little bit of urban fantasy for Three Ravens Publishing. The thing I've got out right now is Car
You must
Wars.
be communicating telepathically today.
The only thing I'm really known for. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, so you're good.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm the Car Wars guy. I write sci-fi. I write a little bit of urban fantasy, and I love Babylon 5.
I guess it's on our end then.
Oh, freaking standing. All right, next we got Miss H.P. Hollow.
Hello, so I write as both HP Hollow and Edie Sky. Under both pen names, I write silly, fun fantasy adventure. The only real difference is HP Hollow is semi-clean and Edie Sky is very spicy. And my latest release is under the Edie Sky name, and it's Monster Girl Tamer about monster girls and chosen ones and nonsense. And
Nonsense is good. All right, next we have Mr. Josh Hayes.
Hello, I'm Josh Hayes. I write mostly military science fiction. My series, the Valor Trilogy, the first book in that series got nominated for the Dragon Award in 2019 or 2020. I work for Aethon Books. I'm the operations manager for Aethon Books, and I'm just happy to be here. I love B5. B5 comes, I think it's my number 2 favorite sci-fi show after Battlestar Galactica 2004.
Did you see? Now we got to do another Battlestar Galactica because did you watch New Caprica?
No, no, I did not.
Oh, you missed out, man. That was like Battlestar Galactica meets The Mob, like a little bit of Goodfellas thing.
That sounds fun.
I'm pretty sure that I started watching it. Like I watched like the 1 or 2 episodes, but then I don't know, either didn't grasp it or felt like watching something else. Yeah.
It was in the time where everyone was watching via DVR. Nobody was like buying or streaming or whatever.
Right.
And it was on, Fox. I think I'm pretty sure that's Fox Entertainment where good shows go to die.
I know. Human breaks my heart.
Yeah, and they ended Dollhouse way too quickly, and Terra Nova was amazing. I mean, it's just so many good shows. Anyway, and if it's any of those are not Fox Entertainment, I just kind of give them credit whenever a show I like gets canceled. I assume it's them because they have such a reputation.
It's true.
All right, Lori, you are next. So can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
I am Lori Janeski. I am an author of science fiction police procedurals, and I just released book 2 in the Carter Files series called Raven. It is currently available on Amazon along with the first book, Phoenix. And this is my husband, also editor, Matthew Bowman.
Who likes maps?
Yes.
He's a fan of mapping and books.
Yes, a veteran podcaster.
So, Matt, can you introduce yourself?
Was that for me?
Yeah, can you introduce yourself, Matt?
Yeah, Matthew Bowman. I have, my main claim to fame is that I've been married to her. Also that I've been an editor for last 14 years and counting, and lately started releasing a book online chapter at a time for free that involves aliens and AI and all sorts of stuff with Babylon 5 as a partial inspiration in there.
Oh, cool.
Nice. So Lori, how far in the future is your sci-fi police procedural set?
It's about 400 years.
Okay.
It's our solar system only. So.
And Josh needs to know this. Do you think in the future, in 400 years, they'll still use paper?
They do in my story, but only for
Thank
special
you.
cases. Like
His
warrant.
publisher
If
was
it gets served a
wrong.
warrant, it has to be on paper.
His publisher is just wrong. I'm Team Josh on this one. Paper
Thank
in the
you.
future.
Thanks for getting my back, brother. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I have never forgotten how wrong they were. It stuck with me.
The story behind that is I write, well, Valor is not really a police procedural. It's an investigation with some battle aspects to it too. But the investigator comes into his boss's office, and my original scene had file folders and papers stacked up on his desk. And he says, "Man, boss, I thought we were going paperless, because every agency is going paperless, and they've been going paperless for like 50 years. And Steve, my friend and publisher, he said, "They're not going to have paper in 2600." And I said, "They're always going to have paper." He's like, "They're not going to have paper." And so I switched it to have a whole bunch of like data pads stacked up, and I
Captain
changed the
Picard
joke.
style.
Yeah. And
all over the desk.
I changed it, the joke, to say, I thought we were going padless. So I was still able to work the joke, but I was very disappointed about the paper.
And there was
my
some.
guys have paper.
The
There
thing
was some
about
smart
paper
guys.
is it's so practical. Like, I can't see it disappearing. I mean, and
Thank
the thing
you.
is, it's still there in Babylon 5. They still
Yeah.
read newspapers. If it's good
Yeah.
enough for Babylon
Customized
5, it's
newspapers.
good enough for me.
Yep.
Well, and one thing that never runs out of battery: pencil and paper.
Yeah.
Paper. Yep.
True.
Well, it's also a luxury. When you're when you're out in space and you don't have trees around you and you don't have other materials that you can just turn into paper, although future technology can probably turn rocks into paper, or something that's very much like it, even though it's never seen a tree.
I'm not laughing. I'm sorry.
She's always laughing at me.
The rocks into paper thing. I'm sorry.
You have to have scissors
All you need in
first.
that case is scissors. Then
Yeah.
you got the whole thing.
Oh, that was dad joke.
Yeah.
Dad joke. Okay.
I was laughing. Josh was laughing. We get it.
Paper is a luxury because it takes up physical space. And when you are on a space station, and they did a whole episode about that on Babylon 5 about the luxury of having a slightly larger cabin.
Yeah.
When you have space at a premium, something that takes up space is a luxury item, even if it is a newspaper.
Or even mass, because it takes, you've got to lift that stuff out of the gravity well where it was manufactured.
Yep.
So
Well,
the
I
thing
just
is-
read a series while we're on paper for just a minute. I read a series by Chris Rucchio called The Sun Eater. His 6th book just came out, Disquiet Gods. And this book is set like, I don't know, it's like 10,000 something years in the future. It's like super, super far future. They're still using paper. And one of the things that I hadn't thought about when he did it was that they use paper if they need to pass secrets to people, because their world is so interconnected with surveillance and electronics or whatever. They write stuff on paper and then hand it to each other. I thought that's interesting too. But anyway,
synthetic paper is possible. There are processes to turn certain algae into paper. Bamboo takes up very little room, lightweight. It could also be turned into paper, so it's not as much of a luxury, and you don't need whole forests to do it. So I was at the doctor's office today driving some people around in the family, and we watched how it's made, and that happened to be the topic today.
nice.
Waiting room TV. But with that being said, as part of this introduction, I tell you how we first found them. It's been so long with each of them. It was in some hive of scum and villainy, and we were having lots of fun. Probably. All right. So because you guys have all been guests, I'm not going to ask you the religion question, but this will be airing during the summer. So we're going to pretend we're civilized. And what do you take your tea with or your coffee or tea in the summer? Do you drink it just by itself, hot, cold? What do you eat with it? Like, what's your summer beverage ritual?
Always black, always hot.
It is green.
Green. Okay. Do you eat anything with your coffee?
Green.
I see what you
Green
did there.
coffee
So
or green
for
tea?
those who are listening, I'm holding up a clear water bottle that holds a mysterious green liquid in there, and it does contain a small amount of tea in there. But yes, it does come in purple, but I prefer green.
Double whammy on the sci-fi references.
I'm always iced lattes all the time. Like, I don't care what season it is. Iced lattes forever.
I
Arnold Palmer.
Nice. I recently discovered iced coffee, the cold brew stuff from Dunkin'. I was taking my mom for appointments, and I tried it just because like I had time to kill, and they won't let you like use their bathroom if you're not a customer. And I'm like, I'll get a coffee. And it was so good. I'm like, where has this been all my life? So, and you don't have to put that much cream. Just a little bit of cream, a little bit of like French vanilla. So get just a little. It's perfect. Do you guys eat anything with your coffee or when you drink your tea?
No.
Me either. What about you, Dave? Coffee or tea? Did we scare him away?
No, it's definitely coffee. Definitely hot. Still with the French press. Still with heavy cream and honey.
Nice.
Oh, honey.
Can you hear me? Check.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Dave. So, do you eat anything with your coffee?
Yeah. It's hot. No, just coffee. No sweets with it, but that's self-inflicted wound of type 2 diabetes. Like I used to eat a pecan roll with coffee at any given opportunity, and well, too many of those, and then you're a Wilford Brimley aficionado.
Yeah. The getting older and having to watch your calories will do that to anybody. But all right, so we obviously are here to talk about Babylon 5. We've hinted at it in all of the introduction because they just can't help themselves. So we're going to start with the opening question. How did you guys find the series Babylon 5? Because obviously you're all huge fans.
I don't remember how I found it.
Me neither. I'm so glad I'm not the only one. We were just talking about it before we got on. I'm like, I can't remember how I got into this. I know it was after college, but I can't remember if it was his idea or our friend Olivia's. So I'm going to blame Olivia for that one.
Sure, she's not here to defend herself.
Yeah, she's not here.
I vaguely remember it airing on TV when I was a kid, but I was too young to care about it. But then the Blu-ray re-release came out recently, and this is how I found out that Babylon 5 is actually my husband's like top favorite sci-fi show of all time. We've been married 11 years, and I'd never heard of it. And so outside of when it was on TV when I was a kid, and so we just finished watching season 4 of Babylon 5. Like we've been making an event of watching it every night. And, so this is the first time I've encountered it in any like memorable way. But yeah, it's totally, my husband said it's the best sci-fi ever. We're watching it.
Yeah,
I remember watching it. I think it was on UPN. And I can't remember if it was.
It was not.
It wasn't on UPN. What network?
No, because that was Paramount's private network, and that would kind of would have not have happened.
I'm trying to remember now.
B5 aired on Turner.
Was it Turner?
I forget who got it originally, but Turner got it for the last season.
It was Warner Brothers who got it originally, right? WB?
According to the wiki.
Maybe it was WB.
Yeah, it was according to the wiki, it was created by Warner Brothers. So presumably they'd put it on their own TV station. I mean, I can't imagine them making it and then giving it to someone else instantly. Yeah. And it aired from 93 to 98 because the test pilot came out in 93 where they tested the market.
My good friend of mine who got me hooked on it. Like he just handed me the entire like VHS box set before it was DVD.
Oh man.
Plus the made for TV movies and a list of what to watch in what order. So the stories made sense.
I'm sorry. I said UPN, but I meant PTEN. That was the network that I saw, Primetime Entertainment. It was also on TNT.
Okay. So I actually discovered it, believe it or not, in 2017, 2018, when we started podcasting. When we added the religion question to the sci-fi shenanigans, it was Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly. And we had a guest about halfway through that season was like, no, Babylon 5. What are you talking about, Babylon 5? And I never got around to watching it because there's so many shows that I missed when I was in the Army that I've got so much to watch. And then Josh was like, we really should, because I said, hey, we want to have you back. What topic would you like to talk about? And he said Babylon 5. And I'm like, people have said that. Let's do this. And then in preparation for the show, I watched yesterday the first 2 episodes. And I'm like, shit, why haven't I been watching this? So now I've got to buy the box set, and it's all Josh's fault.
Oh, yeah. It's totally worth it, though.
It's well worth it. It's well worth it.
I remember being astonished when I started it, because whenever I mentioned that I was watching it, like all my friends were excited because we're a bunch of nerds, but a lot of them said that the first, you're back. Yay.
Nice. It worked.
A lot of them said that the first season is skippable, which blows my mind, because as I was watching it, it's like, I understand that they were finding their footing in the first season, and seasons 2 through 4 are really where it's at. But I think what I've interpreted is that a lot of my friends have meant that the first season is skippable compared to the rest of Babylon 5, but compared to a lot of other television, it's still pretty amazing. Like there's not a single episode I didn't enjoy.
I think
I
used
I
to
suppose
tell
if you already know what's going on and you want to get into the much more meat of things, then yeah, you can jump back into 2, but you can't skip it when you're doing it for the first time. You'll
Right.
be confused.
I remember telling people that Babylon 5 you could watch 2, 3, and 4 and skip 1 and 5, but I usually said that in the context of I personally think the Shadow War is like the greatest through arc of any TV show,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you get a little bit of it in season 1. Obviously, if you've watched season 1, there's elements in 2, 3, and 4 that make way more sense if you've seen season 1. But I love all 5 seasons, but my heart lies in 2, 3, and 4, and I could watch 2, 3, and 4 over and over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
And so I would agree with you if you've watched it if you're watching it for the first time, watch all the 5 seasons.
yeah.
But if you're going back to enjoy it, a lot of times I'll just watch 2, 3, and 4.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of critical stuff that they set up in season 1 that you
Yeah.
don't really think about until you watch it a second time. Like
Right.
as you're watching season 1 for the second or third time, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
They're setting up this little bitty thing that makes almost no sense that in, 3 seasons later is very critical.
Yep.
And I'm just a Commander Sinclair groupie. He's still my favorite. I love Captain Sheridan, but I will watch season 1 repeatedly just for Sinclair. And
Yeah.
sorry, I have a crying baby. Well, I'm working on that.
Not the one, not the one.
Yeah, not yet.
So one of the things that struck me is, given when this came out, like 93 to 98 was the range that this was on the TV. And that was the era where all sci-fi was mostly pretty campy. It was like, almost G.I. Joe ending with laughter and, like everything resolved. Thinking compared to like a Stargate SG-1 when that came out, right? That was a very campy TV show. There's room for that. I love that too. Whereas this one already starts in like episode 1 and 2. Like it's not campy. It's like, oh, we almost poisoned this guy and we've got a war and there's a war that happened before it started. And oh, by the way, the politics are like getting in the way of what's best for everyone because someone just wants to get reelected. Like you didn't see that kind of stuff right away in some of the other shows. Like Stargate got it later, but I mean, it's just right off the bat. They didn't play around. They took themselves seriously, which I kind of like.
Well,
one of the
Well, I don't think it's so much that they take themselves seriously. It's that they have lots of humor and they poke fun at themselves in almost every single episode.
Yeah.
But what they have is a very clear concept of the larger universe. It's that same sort of thing that you have in Star Wars, where you go into the Mos Eisley Cantina and you just have this feeling that if the camera were to follow any other person or creature in that cantina, there would be a story going on somehow. It may not be as interesting as the farm boy learning to use a laser sword, but there would be a story. There's something going on off screen. And you get that feeling from the first moment of Babylon 5.
I think that compared to a lot of the other shows that were going on at the time, I mean, Babylon 5 was really the first sci-fi show that really tackled big arc storytelling in a really intentional way.
Yeah.
In the way that, I mean, J. Michael Straczynski wrote the entire series. He wrote it before. I want to say he wrote it all before they started season 1, but he might have just that he had it all planned out before they started
outline.
season 1.
Mm-hmm.
He had an
And-
outline.
that was like the selling
on-
point is it was a complete series, total
Right.
story arc all contained.
Yeah, and so they did have some standalone episodes that didn't really affect the major plot, but like David was saying, there's a lot of episodes that maybe it's a standalone episode as the overall like the episode, but there's things that happen in that episode that affect plot lines down the road, and I thought that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it.
And the character moments too; those are really big. Even if you don't get a
100%.
lot of forward motion on the plot, you
Mhm.
still get the in-depth look into people's personality, their history, their motivations, all that kind of stuff. And you can still, unlike Star Trek, you can still have conflict with each other. You know, we're gonna unite at the end. You know, and you know we're gonna really, you know, all stand together and fight the bad guys. You know, because that's great. But at least in the difference between it and Star Trek is that in Star Trek we all get along, and in Babylon 5 we're still human beings and aliens,
Right.
and we still hate each other sometimes. You know, and
Oh, yeah.
it's great for that part.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with you get like early on. Londo Mollari is one of the most congenial, affable characters in the cast, and by the time you get to like season 3 or 4, man, he's despicable in a lot of ways.
Oh,
but
yeah.
you still want to root for the guy.
Yeah,
that's
he's hands down my favorite character in the series for that reason, because the way he starts out, you would not expect him to develop the way he does, and yet do those terrible things, even if sometimes unintentionally, but still remain likable while he does it. I mean, that character alone is just really incredible writing.
I like the fact that, like, specifically with him and Jakar, because they're more of a pair.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pairings with different characters, and with him and Jakar,
Yes.
the interactions were so well done that they could be angry with each other, and saying things, but also meaning other things, and then you as a viewer knows that either Londo is lying, or that he's going to do something different, or that Jakar is planning something, and those kind of interactions, like the depth at which the characters interacted, not just that we got a character thing, because like you mentioned Star Trek, but like there are some drama moments in Star Trek between different characters, but you never really got like really deep, intricate, like interactions between the characters that they're going against each other, or they're going for their own interests and not just the interests of the crew. And in here you have multiple characters that are, they band together at some points, and they work together. Sometimes they're just working to set the other guy up, but they're also like, you can tell that they have very personal interests and goals and desires, and a lot of times they conflict with others, and that dynamic is awesome, I think, in the show. It's a great poster.
The scene that really comes to mind for me, speaking in terms of Jakar and Londo's interactions in particular, and how extreme they can get, is trying to avoid too many spoilers, but the scene in the elevator where both are trapped, and there's some humor in there, but and I forget what season it's in, but relative to what has happened in terms of the plot there, like there's genuine animosity there, and Jakar is perfectly in a position to save both of them, but because of things that have happened is not really willing to, because of some political machinations. And it's an interesting little scene for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, and beyond not just willing to, like he's actively willing to go to their death because he's going to take his hated enemy with him.
Right.
And I can respect
You
that.
got to get that song. Not many fishes left in the sea.
So that's one of the things that I liked that stood out is all of that craft, because you see it in the first couple episodes at least, and then I skimmed some of the other ones just to kind of get a feel for it. Not enough to know what's going on, just enough to fake it for this episode. A lot of their spacecraft, like the way they did space stuff, felt more believable than some of what's out there, which I thought was kind of cool. Like it wasn't just like World War II in space when it comes to the dogfights and stuff.
Oh, no, like the Star Furies, like that's probably one of the best done fighter craft I've seen in sci-fi.
For sure. I love that it's the first show that I've seen where they could spin on a dime, where it wasn't like they're turning like a fighter pilot in World War II.
Yeah, we're not we're just gonna.
They could just spin, and I had never seen that before. And
fully vectored movement.
Right, 100%. And the ships were unique.
Wrong franchise.
Kind of like, I mean, Star Trek had unique ships per like species or whatever, but I liked the different models and the different look and the capabilities of each. They really, I mean, he did a really good job. On the story is fantastic and phenomenal, but just like the the little things, like the design of it is just so unique and a lot of times beautiful that it's just such, even with, you go and look at it now and obviously the special effects are 20 whatever plus years old, but they still look good.
Well, that's one of the things that stood out to me as someone who had never seen it before and is watching in this era of incredible movie graphics. Sure, when I first started out, like I basically, there were points where I said that the series looks like it had PS2 graphics with a budget of whatever they could find in the couch cushions.
Yeah, right.
The thing about it is, after a few episodes, the world itself is so well realized. I stopped noticing how dated the graphics were.
For sure.
Yeah, like the storytelling and the acting carry it so well.
Yeah.
And the practical effects, like where they spent their money, was like they spent a fair bit of money on just good practical special effects.
Oh, yeah.
And like because it's the actors are so good at it and it's such a good story, you just lose track of the special effects. Like you don't even care anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, those special effects held up for a very long time.
Super long time.
It wasn't so much because of the quality of the effects, but rather the use to which they did it. They planned everything out in such a way that they weren't trying to go for flash. They were trying to tell a story with the graphics. They weren't trying to say, hey, look, let's have another shot of the spacecraft coming through here so that it looks awesome for no other reason. No, they were telling a story with every single movement of the spacecraft, every single moment where someone comes through the jump gate, all of those, nothing was wasted.
There was only one other series that I can think of, and I'm looking at a list of 50, 90s sci-fi series, and there's only one other one that I think maybe applies, and I don't know about the third. But this was the first sci-fi show that I can remember where you felt like you were there watching the ships instead of, and the ships did things instead of just sitting on the screen. Like in Star Trek, the Enterprise just sits. It doesn't matter if it's going or moving. It just sits there. And when they meet another ship, they just sit there. They don't actually do anything. They orbit a planet or whatever. And this was the first show that I watched where you could follow the fighter past the station and it was fighting, and then it was very cool and interesting. Deep Space Nine did that a little bit later in like season 4 of Deep Space Nine, but most of the sci-fi shows that were out at that time, even if the graphics may be quote unquote better, they didn't do nearly as much as Babylon 5 did.
And one of the things, speaking of the graphics, is that I noticed, like growing up, obviously Star Trek was on the TV all the freaking time, and it was like the aliens was just different forehead ridge of the week, right? Like all of them are basically humans that happen to have funny little painted dots on their face. Mm-hmm. These aliens actually looked different. Like they spent some money on the costuming to make the aliens look alien.
Yeah.
Well, and finding actors that are willing to stay in that costume for long periods of time, like Andres Katsoulis, the guy who plays Shakar, like that dude lived in that freaking makeup.
For sure.
So finding the guy that I'm terrible with names. Lost in Space.
Bill Mumy.
Bill Mumy, thank you, Bill Mumy. When they offered him his choice of roles on Deep Space Nine, because they were doing some back and forth casting later on to try to calm the warring fandoms. When Bill Mumy said, okay, you can have any role, like what alien do you want to play? And he's like, human.
Yeah.
What was? I want to not spend hours in makeup at the start of every day.
Yep.
So he played a human security officer.
I get it. That stuff like the Jakar, the orange guy who I still swear looks green to me, but whatever. But can you imagine having to wear that all the time? That does not look comfortable.
You said green lizard on episode 1, and I'm like, a green lizard? There's what?
There's no lizard.
There's no lizard.
He looks green, so like green scaly lizard. It makes sense.
Definitely orange.
I had to ask them, dear listener, in the pre-show to make sure they weren't just messing with me. Like this is, mess with the colorblind guy thing. Because Josh does that sometimes. Some of my best
I would never.
he sends me. So he sends them to Richard Fox too. So I get it. Like, I'm in good company.
He's kind of a burnt umber.
Okay, I'm gonna pretend that that's a real color, and we're just gonna smile. But yeah,
I know what color you're talking about.
But yeah, that guy, like the costuming there compared to what we were seeing in contemporary shows was just unreal. And then you had that one alien that we briefly showed you when I went through some of those images that was like had to take a machine body because he was sort of gaseous almost, I think.
The Vorlons, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Vorlon, you never really get to see the Vorlon's actual body. I don't remember. I don't think
They do.
like all you get is encounter suits.
Right.
There are 2 episodes where you see them outside of the suit. And it is a plot point, so I am not going to describe it in case of spoilers. However, the way that they look is different depending on who is looking at them.
That's true.
So
that's true.
Even though you have seen them on the screen, have you really seen them?
Right.
But no, just the fact that you did that kind of stuff in an age when you like, it's not just looking at the show, and at face value, it's still good looking at it. And I'm gonna make myself feel old, but it's been 26 years since the show ended, right? As of recording, and more than that, 30 years since they released the pilot. And you compare that even now, like the way they went into those details, you still don't see a lot of shows spending a lot of effort to get aliens to look alien.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the occasion of like, I think Stargate gave you the little green men. I mean, that's about as extreme as you got, and that was more of a tongue-in-cheek humor than anything. You just don't see a lot of that.
Well, what I like. Sorry, go ahead.
Really interesting alien stuff that happens. I mean, you'll get to an episode where Londo's and Bill Mummy's character, I can't remember the character. Lanier.
Oh yes.
Are carousing, and like Lanier's along for the ride, like it or not, and they're playing cards, and Londo's winning, and when you find out how he cheats at cards, like you're gonna be both amazed and disgusted at the alienness of it.
Oh my goodness.
What I liked
remember
about
reaching that scene and having to pause and being like, this show with this tiny budget decided to spend budget on that.
Yes.
What I thought was funny that they did is that like you said, I jumped around, but there's a scene, an opening. So it's like one of the intro things, and you got the security guy, and he's trying to get all these girls to come back to his cabin. You think, I know what he's going to do, because he's talking about his favorite things, and he's watching like ancient cartoons and eating popcorn.
The God of Chaos.
Yeah.
What I liked about
God of Chaos,
the aliens in B5 over probably the majority of sci-fi shows even now is that they weren't just single-minded. Like you didn't have like an alien race that they were all in it together. Like they were all doing the same thing. They were all on the same page. Their aliens backstabbed each other even among their own races. And I mean,
civil wars in this.
The closest you can get to that is maybe the Minbari, but even like as you get further into the season 4 and 5, like they fracture a lot too, and have different ideas, and I like seeing that because I think every show does that with humanity, where there's different factions of humanity and they all have it, but when it comes to aliens, they're usually all like homogenous, like we're all doing the same thing, and I like that B5 did it differently.
Yeah, and as much as I want to keep this going, I've got more to say, and they've got more to say. I can see it on their faces. We're going to pause for a moment.
I think we're going
to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and boom.
Atlanta cabbie by day, amateur auto duelist by night, Ricky Turner is living the dream. That is, until he wakes up in the Gold Cross facility to discover his last match was more than a failure. It was a fatality. Indebted for the cost of the clone body and reboot, Ricky heads back to the arena to do the one thing he knows how to do: drive offensively. But at the rate amateur matches pay out, it'll take several lifetimes to pay his debt. Luckily, the AADA has announced a new nationwide road rally designed to challenge even the hardiest of auto-dueling teams. Dead Man's Run. Can Ricky and his clandestine crew traverse the wasteland from Atlanta to Sturgis, survive against packs of cannibals, roving biker gangs, and amateur auto-duelists out to make a name for themselves? Welcome to the world of the Car Warriors Auto-Duel Chronicles. Tales from the freeways of the future, where the right-of-way goes to the biggest guns and death sports rule the airwaves. From clandestine highway battles to primetime arena combat, jump behind the wheel, follow the fast-paced action, and never forget to drive offensively.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And I figured you'd like that one, Dave. The Auto Duel Chronicles is the Car War stuff that Dave mentioned. He's written one of those books, so I figured I'd slip that in there and surprise him a little bit.
Nice.
Right. So we were talking about Babylon 5, and we've talked a little bit about, why it stood the test of time. But what is it individually that each of you love about the show so much? We're going to start with you, Heather. We're going to just go round robin.
Oh, my brain totally just turned off. I really enjoy the complexity of it. And I know we've touched on that before. I had another answer, but it has just completely fallen out of my brain. You may have to come back to me.
That's okay. All right, Josh.
I don't know. I think the story is the story and the depth at which they go to tell the story really sets it apart from many other shows that I've watched and love. I really, there's so many shows out there that either have a good story and they get canceled, or they don't know what they're doing until it gets too late, or they have a great story and then you get to the final season and the writers have told you it's not purgatory for the length of the show, and then they're in purgatory. And there's so many shows that don't have everything: a great story, great characters, a beginning, an end. This show has that, and I think that from a storyteller aspect, getting to experience that in a visual medium that's complete like this is very rare. And so that's my favorite thing, is just the completeness of it.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of my thing, and it relates to the story. But one thing that I like about the storytelling is that it's timeless in a lot of ways. And I say that primarily because there are elements when you get especially later in the series where all the political craziness is happening, where I looked at my husband after I heard some of the dialogue, and it's like, this feels so recent. There's no way this was written 30 years ago. It's like, I think one of them that came to mind was, there was how did you solve all these problems back on Earth that you've named? We rewrote the dictionary kind of thing. And there's more than a few instances, especially as the series goes on, where it's very ahead of its time. And that's, I appreciated that level of complexity and that level of depth.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? What is it for you that you love about the series?
Like Josh, I really love that it's a complete story, like beginning, middle, end. 5 seasons plus some made-for-TV movie stuff. But it's a total story. It doesn't die the death of mediocrity that a lot of TV series do. Like Supernatural, for example. Like they could have ended that with Swan Song on, I think it's the end of season 6, and it would have been a perfect ending. As a fan, I would have been completely happy with it. But they drug it out for another 9 seasons, and it was what it was. Babylon 5 is a complete story, beginning, middle, end, and the primary person whose story it is, Londo Mollari, he's kind of the villain. So you get the story from his viewpoint, which is, I won't say it's unique in storytelling, but there's not a lot of stories that do that. And in visual media, there's not a lot of stories that do that and tell a complete story. So I really love it for those 2 elements.
Okay. And what about you, Matt?
Well, I'd say that it's the depth. A lot of it is the depth of character, the depth of plot, the depth of world building, that it is so very planned out. And as has been said, it did not peter out. I mean, it got a little rushed in season 4, and I like to joke that season 4 is the final season. But even with season 5, you're still working off of a depth of world building that has already been set up. And the only way that it works is through the depth of character, the way that they interact with each other, the way that each one of them sees the world. These are not cardboard cutouts, and they are not just feeling things because the script tells them to feel the things,
Right.
like happens in so many other shows. These are people, and they're experiencing, even though it's 300 years in the future, they're experiencing a lot of the same stuff that happens today. Like Edie said, it is timeless in a certain way, because the problems that they face are not made up. They are the same problems that real people face today and throughout history.
Yeah. Heather, you were going to jump in?
It was my understanding that season 4 was actually supposed to be the last season. Like, they were told they weren't getting a season 5, and then season 4 ended, and it's like, oh, you got a season 5 now. Have fun. And
Well,
so
I told my story. Now what am I going to do?
The story behind that is that it was supposed to be 5 seasons. It was always written as 5 seasons, but as they got, I think, halfway through season 4, or maybe it was halfway through season 3. I'm not sure on the timeline, but the crux of it is basically that they didn't think that they were going to get picked up for 5.
Okay.
And so the reason season 4 feels rushed is because J. Michael Straczynski had to go back and quickly slot in everything that he needed to get in for his story. And that's why the Shadow Wars ends at 4, but the Shadow War wasn't supposed to end until season 5. And that's why there's a whole other kind of like the Earth-Mars conflict. A lot of that conflict was supposed to be in season 4. And so it's almost flip-flopped in the way that you get the story from the way that he wanted to do it, because 4 was supposed to be 5 and 5 was supposed to be 4. They had to rework it to make it work. And I believe that the ending, like the ultimate ending of the show, was what he wanted. But I wish that they, like, everybody's talked about doing a remake and everybody hates it and all of that, but I would love to see them do a remake and do it the way that he wanted to tell the story.
Absolutely.
Like from beginning to end, and like updated, graphics. I'm partial to the characters, but I know there's no way they could do it with the older characters. It'd be cool to have a cameo here and there, but I'm not opposed to remakes as long as they're good and they don't ruin the base of the story, especially when it comes to B5. But I would love to see them redo it the way that it was supposed to have been done originally. That would be really cool.
What would you think about them redoing it, but taking the story forward into the future? So those characters that want to come back, they've aged. Well, of course, it's been X number of years.
I'd be okay with that. It would just, like I said, my thing with B5 is that it has to be a good story. And I don't want them to bring it back just because they want to bring it back and then not have a story to tell. That would infuriate me.
Well, I have related feelings about the animated movie, because the animated movie that came out recently is actually the first thing I watched of Babylon 5. And so I went in without any context and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But now that I have seen Babylon 5, the story is pretty clearly fan service without a lot of the complexity of the show. And I'm kind of afraid to rewatch it now that I've seen the show, because I know I'm not going to enjoy it as much.
I just started watching that movie, actually, and I thought the same. I'm only half an hour in, but I thought that exact same thing, because there's so many things like the Zathoth stuff and all of these little really quick things that happen in the beginning of the movie that A, doesn't mean anything to you if you've never seen it, but B, what new things are you doing? And that's what I want. If they ever redo it or continue to do it, it needs to be new, but it also just needs to be as good a story as the first one was.
Yeah, the movie threw me off too because because Zathras plays such a large role in the road home. I expected him to be a huge character in the series itself, and I was so mad when he played such a small role because
Yeah.
my expectations were
Yeah.
not
Not Zathras, Zathras.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't want to skip her because she had to deal with some baby stuff. But Lori, what is it for you that you love so much about Babylon 5?
Well, I basically agree with everything that's been said so far, the depth of it and everything. But the one thing that really stands out for me is just the characters. The characters carry the whole thing. Even the episodes where you're kind of like, the plot's a little, okay, whatever. You watch it anyway because you love these guys. And one of the most refreshing things about it is I was basically raised on Star Trek. My parents were Trekkies. We were Trekkies. Next Generation came out when I was really little. My mom still remembers, oh, well, your sister was a baby and it was 1989 and we were watching Star Trek and I was so excited. And I'm like, okay. So I had it basically growing up and that was the sci-fi. And then here I am as a, out of college and adult, finally see Babylon 5 and it's like, this is amazing because the characters are just different. There's nothing wrong with the characters in Star Trek. But the fact that, I kind of said this before, that there's no real character conflict because everybody is supposed to be civilized and, this is the 80s and we're above such things, that kind of, but it's like, you can't discount human nature.
That was the very first episode of Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah.
The objection to Q was, we have evolved since then.
Yeah.
We are so much better than we were, and that would be just 200 years. I mean, how much does human nature really change in 200 years?
Yeah, and which is nice, and it works for Star Trek. What Star Trek can do, the rest of us can't do, as I learned when I was writing my sci-fi. So that's a long story, and I won't get into it. But the point is, us little plebs can't be Star Trek. Star Trek is its own thing. But the fact that Babylon 5 didn't try to pretend that we had outgrown who and what we are, and that they could tell a story about human nature using aliens to do it was just incredible. I think it's going to be timeless. I mean, I think when I'm, 85 years old and the grandkids are coming over or whatever, I'm going to say, we're going to watch Babylon 5 and it's still going to be just as good, because it's like Shakespeare almost. I don't think J. Michael Straczynski is quite as good as Shakespeare, but just as an example, Shakespeare lasted this long because he understood human nature, and those stories, no matter what you do to them, they're still relevant. And Babylon 5 has touched the edges of that a little bit. They've managed to capture that, people are still people, whether they're aliens or not, and we're going to be counted on to F things up a lot.
For sure, 100%.
And then we got to go and fix it. And part of the heroic parts of the characters is, okay, we screwed up. Now we're going to fix it, and that's the heroic part of it, and that's never going to go out of fashion.
One of the things that I liked about the characters is that, as opposed to Star Trek, that we're kind of using as kind of a baseline comparison here, but as opposed to Star Trek, where the characters kind of, this isn't the right turn of phrase, but they were kind of out of like everyone's, like the normal people's league. Right, like they were executive officers, they were high-level officers, they were in charge of the flagship, they were like the pinnacle of the Federation, and no one was better than them. And so, like, as a viewer, I felt like, at least, that I was watching someone do something that I had absolutely no hope of doing or capable of doing or anything like that. But with B5, like, you can see yourself in those shoes. Like, you can see yourself, even Sheridan as the captain, you could see yourself as Sheridan, you can see yourself as Ivanova, you could see yourself as Dr. Franklin. Like, they were just regular people in a extraordinary situation, and that was interesting to me even now watching it, because I could relate to those people more readily than I can the command crew of Star Trek. And I like the Next Generation, when season 3 of Picard came out, I watched it and laughed and cried and stood up and cheered, because it was basically TNG season 8 all over again. And I loved it, but I feel more connected to B5 than I ever have for Star Trek.
There's a character moment in the very beginning of the pilot movie that I always think of when we're talking about them being very real people. and it's this moment of them coming down in a low gravity area, and there's this big sign on the back wall that says, keep your hand on the railing at all times. This is low gravity area, and you have Garibaldi and Sinclair. Sinclair is, he leads by example. He's got his hand on that, but you can tell from his body language he doesn't need it. But he is the commander. He can't be seen breaking the rules. Garibaldi is following along behind him. He's got his hand technically on it, but he's just sort of brushing along.
Right.
That tells you so much about their characters, but also about the world around them, because their body language is so different from all the others. And that was another thing that Babylon 5 did that others did. You have other shows, the extras are just walking by and they're not acting.
Yeah.
What's the most famous scene, probably the most rewatched scene for all fans? It's the Babylon 5 mantra. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Go watch that. That is one of the most quotable bits of science fiction out there. But while Ivanova is detailing the Babylon 5 mantra, you see everyone else in the command center stop what they're doing, turn, and look at her. They are acting. That means they have to be paid more. That is the kind of detail that Babylon 5 did for those character details, because it's not even just the background characters, what they're doing, it's how they're reacting to the others. It is a dynamic world, and it is something that isn't just set dressing. It feels live.
I think
Speaking of, go ahead.
Just really quickly, I think the only two like character idiosyncrasies that I think are notable from Star Trek: The Next Generation that I can think of, and I'm sure there are more, but it's how Riker sits down and when Picard adjusts his shirt.
Oh, the
like
Picard
those,
maneuver.
Yeah, how Riker sits down and how Picard stands up.
That's as deep as you get for character idiosyncrasies on Star Trek, as opposed to the writing in B5.
The funny thing is that was because Riker, the actor that played Riker, was injured and he was coping with his own pain issues. It wasn't even written into the plot. That was just the actor doing his thing.
Yep.
So we've talked about kind of the dynamic world and what it is. So Mongoose Publishing until 2009 published the Babylon 5 RPG, and then they've recently announced that they're going to do like 6 or 7 novels in the Babylon 5. Have you guys followed up on any of that? Played the game? Read the books?
I didn't even know there was a game.
Totally.
I found out because I Googled it.
No, I knew there was a game. I was just involved in other sci-fi games. Like Traveler was the game of the game du jour for a lot of years. But I did do some tabletop Starship gaming, and there was Babylon 5 miniatures involved, but we didn't play any Babylon 5 stuff.
Right.
Apparently, we have a copy. I didn't even know this. So
Nice.
I showed it to you.
you did.
Nice. How could you have such a treasure and you didn't know?
Well, the
Disappointing.
small child also sucks out my brain cells when he eats. So
Nice.
That is awesome. Have you played the game, Matt? Is it good?
I haven't. I have not. It's been on a project back burner, like way back burner, like on the shelf in the pantry back burner. But it is something that I have thought of doing, to take that stuff and update it for the game rules that I have been writing, just as a little fan project. I'd never be able to sell it, but I'd love to be able to play it. But if they're coming out with a new one, then maybe I shouldn't bother.
According to what I'm finding, they did the game. They didn't actually get a lot of the novels. There's a couple of them out there in Babylon 5 world, yeah, that's the sad thing of adulthood. When you finally have the money to buy all the game books, you don't have the time to play them.
Yep.
yeah, it's a conundrum.
Pretty much.
It's one of those things.
I
I guess we just
watch
have to.
Babylon 5, but I have to wait for the kids to go to bed first, so I get like 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We'll have to find like an old folks home of people that like gaming and nerd stuff, because that'll be funny. Funny have time.
We should all get together and found this, so this is given for the geeks, when you get
Yeah, but you're going to need like old people dice so you can see the stupid dice.
That's a joke that I saw online one time that face it, the old folks home when all the millennials die, they're the ones that grew up playing D&D. So you're going to have the D&D groups in the old folks home.
Might finally have time to play.
Yeah, they're going to have D4 as big as your head so you can read the numbers.
So was there anything that you guys specifically thought, like, obviously I think there's room to do future episodes, and if we do, all of you guys are invited back. And so if dear listeners, if you've got ideas that we can narrow our focus, because this has kind of been very broad, as the first episode when we talk about a new topic generally are. But was there anything specifically you guys wanted to cover? I know Hollow's got to bounce soon and a baby that wants to go to bed, so I don't want to keep you guys too far over.
I have one thought that maybe everybody could give their opinion on. There were so many like cool lore things that happened and twists that happened in the show that you probably couldn't count them all. But one of my favorite elements of the show was Bester, and
yes,
one of my favorite kind of twists was how the human psychers came into existence, and then the connection with the Vorlons.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so well done, even if it wasn't thought of like as when they came out with the Psy-Corps and all of that. But the twist with the humans and the ships and all, like even with the shadows and all of that, I thought that was so cool. And just Bester's on his own was such a great character. He was such a great villain, and watching him from like Chekhov and other things to come and do Bester, who was such a great villain, and he had he had a throwaway episode. I think his first one was a throwaway, and then they brought him back, and he had such a big impact on the series with the short amount of time that he was on screen. They really, not only did they give weight and time to a lot of the usual characters, the regulars, but a lot of the secondary and tertiary characters that had big impacts got to have really good story and really good presentation. And Bester is one of my favorites in that.
I feel like you could do an entire episode just focusing on individual characters themselves.
For sure. Yeah.
Sebastian.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The twist with Sebastian was so great. Like I was like, that's insane. I love that.
That's one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
That and Passing Through Gethsemane. I love that one. And I don't want to spoil it, but I'll just give you the title. That one, great.
We'll have to like do a spoiler episode when we talk about like lore and like all of the great things. Yeah.
Dylan's best moment in the whole series.
So I know.
Oh god, I get goosebumps every time. Every time.
So I know some of the episodes, some of the series out there that were on TV would do special 1 or 2 hour movie events that were sort of outside of the individual seasons that would air. I know like Stargate did that with the Orion stuff. Did Babylon 5 do any of that?
Babylon 5, I think, had 5. Didn't they have 5 movies?
Yeah, counting the pilot movie.
Yeah, there's a prequel movie that.
Yeah. And
I
don't know that I've watched all the movies.
Yeah, because there's like a prequel movie that.
Yeah.
The
Gathering.
No, The Gathering was the pilot.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, like one of Londo's best lines happens in that movie.
Yeah. There was Third Space. That one is skippable. I would say if you really like Babylon 5 and want to be a purist, go right ahead. I had an easier time having fun with that one than I did with season 5. Season 5, just the way that we transitioned into it, I just have not been able to enjoy that transition.
Yeah.
But that's not their fault. They were doing the best they could, as we described earlier.
Yeah.
All the character moments in season 5 are just brilliant, and you can tell At least that's what it looks like to me, that they were taking, okay, what do we do about the plot? I have no idea, but hey, we got all these little character things we can put in, and it's beautiful, but those are all good. And then the plot was just kind of
the ending, the resolution to the series, I thought was like one of the best done series finales of any show.
I'm crying.
Oh man, yeah. I think in my opinion, it's one of the better ones, only topped just barely by The Americans, which is not sci-fi, and I know that's out of this genre, but the ending of The Americans was fantastic. And the third time that I watched Battlestar Galactica, the ending I felt was really, really good. Not the first time I hated it. The third time I watched it, I actually loved it. But
I still hate it.
Yeah, I did before I did my latest rewatch. I did a whole bunch of like, what did the writers, what were they doing with this, and what was their idea for this, or what were their thoughts on that? So I got a lot of like inside baseball information, and so I went and rewatched it, knowing all of that and knowing like their thoughts on what they were doing. It made a lot more sense understanding from a writer's perspective of what they were doing, and it made the story a little better. But man.
All right, with that, we could keep going for another hour, but I promised them we'd keep this one tight. We're definitely going to come back. In the side chat, we are planning potentially to do like season by season review episode, like we would do a movie or a book review episode. I think that could be fun. So we'll get that scheduled so we can get everyone that has time to commit to that. With that being said, since I know you have the first Hard Out, HP Hollow, sometimes ED Sky, what are you writing now, and then where can they find you? And as usual, all the links will be in the show notes.
Well, I am not writing anything now. I'm currently editing the next book in the Blood Knight series, which is the Hot Vampire Slayers one, and then my next actual writing project will be Monster Girl Tamer 2.
Nice.
Okay. All right, Josh, what about you? What are you writing, and how can they find you?
I am still trying to finish the first book in my new Weaponized series. I've found a crap ton of plot holes, and then found a plot that was actually out of order, and so I had to rewrite it.
I hate those moments.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it until I started writing book 2. And I got halfway through book 2, and as I'm editing book 1, as I'm writing 3 of them before we published them, I was like, all of this is backwards. And then when I went to fix all the backward stuff, I found other things that were wrong. And then I'm like, oh God. So it's been major rewrites in the first book, but it's going to be a lot better when I finish it. I just published the Navarre's Chronicles, which is the sci-fi retelling of Peter Pan, but I wrote that a really long time ago. So Weaponized will be out. I'm hoping by the end of the year, but we'll see.
Nice. All right. Lori, you first. What are you writing at the moment, and how can listeners find you?
Well, I am on Twitter and Facebook. Not Instagram, sorry, but Twitter and Facebook. And I also have a blog, littlesquirrelbooks.com. I'm currently working on book 3 in the Carterverse, or the Carter Files, whichever. Carterverse is good. That one will be, I'm doing a bird thing. So we have Phoenix, which is this guy here. And Raven just came out in April, and book 3 will be Eagle, and it is pending. So
nice.
Also, audiobooks for book 1 and book 2 are currently being recorded. So hopefully we will get a release date pending sometime soon.
So Heather and Lori are smart. Like, they just pop up their books as perfect props. The rest of us are like, it's on our Amazon. Go look at it. You can find it.
I got them all back there, but they're really hard to reach.
Yeah, your chair only rolls so fast, right?
Yeah, I can't get back there.
All right, what about you, Matt? What are you writing at the moment? You mentioned, was it Royal Road? I think you said you.
Yes, that is where I am currently releasing my free sci-fi novel. The series is called The Best Defense, and you can find it on there. My screen name on there is Novel Ninja, because that is also the name of my editing business. You'll be able to look that up at novelninja.net. But
what did you say the title of it was?
The series title is The Best Defense, but that's the first book right there, One Giant Leap. Because humanity finds out that aliens exist on Leap Day. So
Nice.
I get to have multiple puns in there. That one is a serialized story, and it is eventually going to be Patreon supported. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, Patreon will have been launched. I don't know. It depends on how much of a backlog I can pull up. And it is a story about multiple, there are two alien empires that are going to give Earth a choice of you can either be crushed or join us willingly. And Earth says, no, there's a third option.
Screw you both.
Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine,
baby. Story about humanity bootstrapping itself from basically present day. I've got 2 cheats in there, but you can read those. And it's a story about humanity getting up to the stars. It's a space opera with a little bit more science in it than normal, but it is not hard science.
And if you are watching, you can see he's holding the distraction that slows down his writing time. But he will
that
get
is exactly it. It is very difficult to type one-handed. I can do it, but it is annoying. And the thing is, if I have the keyboard in my lap, he doesn't like that, and he will try to kick it off.
We've all been there. All right. Dave, what are you writing at the moment, and then how can listeners find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
Well, at the moment, we've just wrapped up edits on Ghost Ship Derelict with our wonderful host, J.R. Handley. Hopefully that'll get through copy edits and final proofing and formatting and all the other bells and whistles and make an appearance in time for LibertyCon. That's the plan. You can find me at davidwhensley.com, and my Car Wars novel, 72 Hours to Graceland. I just finished listening through the proofs for the audiobook, so that should be showing up on Audible as well.
Nice. So the at some point in time, the Ghost Ship series will also get audiobooks, but not in time for
not in time for LibertyCon.
Because we're gonna be putting it under the wire to make sure that the proof copies can get to him in time to take him with him. I think Ingram Sparks, we're lucky that it's in the same city that the publisher lives in, so you can get them that way a little bit quicker. We're hoping, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, I'll print the cover on cardstock and just carry it around with me.
That works.
You're going to be at LibertyCon?
Yep.
So will we.
Awesome.
Nice. There you go. You can trade business cards or whatever cool people do at LibertyCon. And with that being said,
if you haven't thought about this, put QR codes on the cardstock for your deals so people can scan it and go buy it.
See, this is why we pay Josh the big bucks, in that he gets double my salary of $0. So you can find us.
Carry the nothing, twice nothing.
It's nothing, yeah.
You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things: the BitChutes, the Rumble, the YouTube, the Twitter, the email for professional purposes only people. We have our Facebook page and Facebook group. We have Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and email. If you want to send the shenanigans or hate mail, she's there for it. She will make you cry. That's on you, though. We have our website, which now that Spotify bought out Anchor FM, it's not as clean and not as pretty. So we just link to it on the Linktree, and I'll tell you, you can go there and support the podcast for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. Or you can support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comments that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until their head explodes and coffee pours out of their eyeballs. And we will film it just for your entertainment because we're masochists like that. And if you go to the link in the show notes and use the code PodcastGrunt, you get 10% off. So there's that. And now that we are officially partners instead of just affiliates, if you have any problems, we get a direct line to their HR people, and we'll just bug them for you, which is always kind of cool. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, we are out. I appreciate you. Heather, Josh, Lori, Matt, David, all of you, thanks for coming. Listeners, for listening, and we will see you again. With that, boom. Wait for it.